Howdy, and welcome to Your Why.
Whoa, stop. You can't start with howdy.
That's how I start every episode.
I know, but it's so Aggie-like.
Yeah, because I'm an Aggie.
Ugh.
We're in Texas.
Yes, we are. I wore the shirt for you.
Yeah, it's a great shirt.
Isn't it a great shirt?
It's very subtle.
Sorry. You want to take two?
Howdy, and welcome to Your Why, Season 3, Episode 7, the season finale of Season 3. Today we have Laura Smith and Saeed Perez on from SpringSpirit, and today our co-host is Josef Klam. Welcome back, Joseph.
Hey, thanks, Evan. It's good to be back, and congratulations on wrapping up a third successful season. It's hard to imagine that it's been 3 seasons already.
Yeah, it is, especially in the face of a pandemic. There was,
I was on the last podcast as we were entering into a season of life that we never could have imagined.
Well, this is a good segue because I actually have that on the outline.
I know, I saw that on the notes.
That's good.
Yeah. I was providing you the segue.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, it's interesting to look back because, we're coming up on a year since everything really locked down and, everything started to happen. And it's like, that day in particular always stands out to me because I remember being in a meeting with a bunch of other local nonprofits and churches just talking about SpringSpirit, and it was really like coming. Remember one of I forget which church was like, yeah, we just canceled our mission trip that's supposed to happen in a couple weeks, and that was the first church I heard of really starting to shut things down. And later that day, we go in to film the podcast episode with CIS. And then I remember we couldn't even record the intro and the outro afterwards because you got called into a meeting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think about it now, and we sat in the small studio, sitting on a couch, no mask, definitely closer than 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was 6 feet of space in that room at the time. That'd be unheard of now.
Yeah, that would be. And that's why whenever we had to stop the podcast, and that was a big factor. There were other factors as well, but like that was one of the biggest factors. I was just looking at it. It was like, there's no way we can continue to record in that space, that small of a space. Right. And so, look at where we're at now.
Yeah, you're moving on up in the world.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, so we had that podcast and great content, great conversation with another partner ministry or organization in communities and schools. And, we were having that conversation in light of all these other external forces that were at work. And we really had no clue what was going to be coming. And you mentioned that we're coming up on a year. It's hard to imagine that this has been a year. In some ways it seems like it's 3 or 4 or 5 years, and in some ways it seems like it's been like that.
Still feels like it's March of 2020.
Yeah, time has just stood still.
Yeah.
But we now in January of 2021, we live in a completely different world than we did in March of 2020.
Yeah, and I think one thing, and it's really interesting talking to some of our partners here at Chapelwood, both on the global and the local side of things, and hearing how people have just had to be so creative with the way they do ministry and the way they reach people, and they just try to help and serve people around them. And I think it's in trying to find the silver lining in it. I think there's been a lot of places that usually like, oh, this is just the way we've done things for years now. And no, we're not going to try to rethink the wheel. We're not going to try to think of a better way to do it. But this has forced people to do that. And I think there's going to be a lot of things that come out of this that people are going to continue to do because they realize, oh, there is a better way to reach people. There's a better way to serve people here. And, I think that as you look back on the year and you look back at COVID, that's one thing that will stand out to me is that it just really pushing that thought, that creativity there in ministry and everything.
Yeah. And for me, it's even highlighted in our interview today that there's in some ways, COVID has redefined a lot of our understandings of certain things. So like the church, at Chapel, as a whole, we've gained a new understanding of what the church is. The church is not. We've always known the church is not just a building. But now we've even recognized that the church is not the time or place of the gathering of people for worship on Sunday, or the opportunity to gather in person. That the church, even if even if social distancing is required, that the church as the body of Christ is active and living and is involved in the transformative kingdom building work that God is engaged in. And so, for SpringSpirit, they've had to also see, oh, we are more than just a place where teams, when a spring baseball season gets canceled for youth across the country, and you're a part of an organization that baseball and sports is a cornerstone of it, what does that mean? Well, they understand that they are more than just a baseball program. They really are an organization that is in the whole child.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's been, as we're on the season finale and I look back on this season, that's been one of my favorite parts. Just like what we're saying is hearing these organizations talk about, how they're continuing to reach. And, it's been stressful on everybody, whether it's the ministry, the nonprofit, whether it's the person they're serving. Everyone's been going through their own hardship, their own stress. And this to me is why you have to have a why behind what you're doing. You have to have that passion, that desire, and really understanding what that is. Because if you don't, it's easy at the end of the day to throw your hands up and say, I don't want to do this anymore.
That's so true.
And so I have enjoyed, again, more than ever, I think that has been, you really having to ask your question in these times, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And that's why I love this podcast and sitting down and talking to these people about that stuff.
That's great.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into that interview now with Saeed and Laura, and we'll catch you back here afterwards. All right. We are now here with Laura Smith and Saeed Perez. Did I say that name right?
Yes, it's correct, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
All good. So y'all want to kind of give us a little introduction to who y'all are and what y'all do with SpringSpirit?
Sure. You want me to go first? Okay. I'm Laura Smith, and I am the Director of Education for SpringSpirit. Have been doing that for 3 years, and then most recently have become the acting director, the campus director for Campbell Road, so the new location that we're starting.
Okay. Yeah, right. And my position in SpringSpirit is ministry coordinator, and I was there 3 years this year almost. And yeah, it's very excited, and I'm responsible for run all the ministry in Pitner.
Okay, awesome, great. So, to the person who's listening, and maybe they've heard the name of SpringSpirit before, or maybe they've never heard it before, they loosely know what it is. Can you kind of give us that 3,000-foot view of what SpringSpirit is and what y'all do?
Yeah, I'll start here. So the term whole child, which has sort of become our term to explain what we're doing, and that is a mind, body, soul approach with mentors to just helping provide opportunities to different pathways for youth, in particular in the Spring Branch community. So what that looks like on a day-to-day basis is ministry programs, sports programs with baseball, softball, and soccer, education programs, helping kids with their reading or with tutorials, or even helping them get into college, and then the mentors sort of come alongside all of that programming and help us carry it out.
That's great.
One thing I think it's interesting that, in the early days of SpringSpirit, it was SpringSpirit baseball. And around the Chapelwood world, we talked about SpringSpirit baseball all the time. We were so excited about what God was doing with SpringSpirit baseball. And to think now, all these years later, we're doing this podcast, and when we think about SpringSpirit, the two individuals we have that we're interviewing are the director of education and the ministry coordinator. And I think that is so indicative of the broader vision and the broader reach that SpringSpirit has had. It's not just about baseball. It really is the whole child. And so I applaud what SpringSpirit is doing, because to hear you say we're about the whole child is one thing. But there are a lot of organizations, there's a lot of institutions that may use phrases like whole child, but when you peel back the layers, there's no evidence to it.
Right.
But when you explore and investigate what's going on, whether it's the Pitner Road campus or whether it's the new campus of Campbell Road, which is an old campus for Chapelwood, it's one of our ministry campuses, that that you start to see every child really is lived out in all that they're doing. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. And Saeed has more stories about, the whole child part of that for sure, but you can see it. And we, the way we talked about it before is, when people used to first come to SpringSpirit, it was the baseball that was the focus. That was the reason, right? And then slowly it's evolved to where that's not necessarily the reason that you're at SpringSpirit, and it can be one of the many other ways that we serve the community.
Yeah, that's great. So, as you can see, the podcast is called Your Why, because we really like to, if you've ever heard of the Golden Circle approach, we really like to focus on the 3 questions of an organization: the why, the how, and the what. And we like to work from the why to the how to the what. And so that's what I kind of want to walk through with SpringSpirit today and ask you all those questions. So whenever SpringSpirit started, and even to what it is today, what's that why behind the organization? Why are y'all out there? Why do y'all have 2 campuses? What you talk about this whole child, but why did y'all see that?
Okay, you want me to take this one again, Saeed?
Take it.
All right. So Kenny Baldwin and his wife Melissa Baldwin, who are longtime members of Chapelwood here, they were the founders of SpringSpirit about 11 years ago. And basically, the success that Kenny has had in his life, not just financially or not just through his career, but just in life, mind, body, and soul, if you will, he attributes that to 3 things, 3 or 4 things: mentors, the education that he got. The way that he got that education was through a baseball scholarship. So there's the sports component, and then his faith that was underlying all of it. And so Kenny and Melissa wanted to respond to the blessings that God had given them through those 4 areas. And so SpringSpirit, the idea was born so that same opportunity could be there for kids of similar backgrounds and similar communities. So Kenny looked, identified the area of Spring Branch as a place that he wanted to start SpringSpirit, had a conversation with Jim Jackson, who was a pastor here at the time. And one thing led to another, and SpringSpirit was born out of that, and some relationships were built that Jim introduced Kenny to other Chapelwood members that could help with that, also had a passion with that. Along the way, they helped start part of the branch, or get the branch going over in the community. But it all started with this: I had opportunities through the different pathways that were provided to me, and I want to give that same recipe for success to other kids.
That's awesome. And it's cool to see, it's cool to hear the heart behind that, and where the idea started with and everything like that. And so as you kind of think about that, why, that why is, okay, we want to give recipe success to these kids that are growing up, and how do we give them the right tools and the equipment to do that? How did that begin to look logistically as SpringSpirit formed, and then even to what it is today? How do y'all continue to give those recipes for success, those tools to these kids?
I mean, it's the holistic approach that we're talking about. And feel free to jump in, Saeed, if you want, but it's all, I think that starting with the our faith and and God's hand in all of it. And we know that is sort of laying the foundation for the hope that you need to sort of persevere, right? And so from there, we've got programs that we realize, education is a huge part of helping you just change your circumstance. And we know the faith, and then mentors just guiding you through all of that. And so those 3 things for sure are, we just know that that's how you need to lay a foundation for successful childhood. I mean, you can see there's different criteria about, statistics about how do you create a balanced life for a child. And I think you'll find that it's definitely all 3 of those aspects, plus faith, the component that we all know is necessary.
It's interesting to think that you're telling this story of the history of the beginnings of SpringSpirit and the influence that Kenny and Melissa leveraged to move forward. And you can tell that story. It's a very linear story of, this happened to Kenny when he was young. These opportunities opened up. But when we talk about ministry and we talk about the movement of the Spirit, we're not necessarily talking about linear movement, right? We're talking about this multidimensional thing. And what's such an important part of this story is that at the same time that God was stirring in Kenny's and Melissa's hearts to do something, God was stirring at Chapelwood.
Yes.
We had, as a part of one of our capital campaigns, had raised money for the Spring Branch Family Development Center and had helped get that up off the ground, which is such an important part of the community, the cornerstone of the community. And then there was this land that we had that the intent was that is where we were going to start a church. Because as a church, when we thought about transformation and thought about impact in a community, of course we'd start a church. Because our desire was for God's kingdom to be made a reality on earth just as it is in heaven. That's right. And so this property was sitting there, and it was God who was stirring in the church and stirring in Kenny and Melissa. And now, all these years later, we can look back and say, well, I don't think Kenny and Melissa could have envisioned what God had in store. And I know Chapelwood couldn't have envisioned what God had in store, but look at what God has done. And it's just an amazing testimony of God's faithfulness and God's movement through God's children.
That's right. And provision, because as you talk about that, the land that you're referencing, those were places. Kenny says that there's 3 areas in Spring Branch that he was sort of looking at that would be a place to start SpringSpirit. And the property that became SpringSpirit on Pittner that Chapelwood owned was one of them, and he had no idea. So God was completely in the middle of all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, question I want to ask is, so for a kid today, if they hear about SpringSpirit and they're like, okay, I want to get involved with that, what does that look like for a kid walking in today logistically, especially like, as we look at COVID and everything like that, and what has it been like for SpringSpirit over these times and everything like that?
We have different activities. For example, we have opportunities in this moment for VI volunteers. For example, we have a team, it's high leadership team, and we provide disciple to them. In the cases they are in high school, and we disciple these kids, and later we try to create leadership in the lives and the families too, because it's all together. When you made that part, these kids, they can serve the community. For example, some of them, not in all activities about COVID, but for example, we have in the beginning of airport, we have a food bank distribution. Some of them are right and help to the community, and they make something. And in this moment, we have the competitive soccer, baseball and softball with different activities. And we try to create a small groups. In this moment, the window is more open to be together in the area, and we can next month in 2 months we can create a small groups to stay in a pavilion or experience. We have camera in this moment, and we have different classrooms there, and we can provide small groups in that part. The more important part is just to say that is transformation. Is we create that part in the family. Is of course is the whole child with the three columns: body, soul, and spirit. But if we put Jesus on the center, and he start to make the transformation, because we are instruments, but the person made transformation is Jesus. And when Jesus is in the center, everything is happening. You can see the land, you can see the money, you can see the kids, the families, and the community start to be transformed in different ways. And for me, the more important is when you put the seed, in this case, it's Jesus, in each kid. That's the future for the next generation. Is the next leaders for this country of Houston in different ways.
I know we have seen significant decrease in drop off of participation in person type activities, and I know that within the school system, the schools that are closer geographically to SpringSpirit campuses, both the Campbell and Pittner, that we've seen more families choosing virtual than in person. Have y'all seen an impact where folks are less interested in coming in person? And how are you maintaining relationships with folks?
It's funny. We've taken to doing monthly calls to the families, and Saeed's part of the team that does that. And it's to keep the relationship if we can't be together in person, but then also to gather information about how we can support the family during that time. And so part of that, we ask, what did you choose? Did you choose virtual or in person? And at first it was about 50-50. And I think, I haven't run the numbers again. It grew a little bit to be more went back in person with the second choice because the fear was gone a little bit more. But there's still quite a few that are doing virtually, and some are not doing it successfully because they're just not made for virtual school. But it is so impressive how we went from no connectivity for so many kids to it's connectivity and it's easy for them. I've worked closely with one of the Northbrook High School kids that's a SpringSpirit kid. He's sending me emails. He's very computer literate now in a way that he wasn't before. And so I think 50-50 was what it is. Not so sure now, but the fear is in the community for sure.
Mm-hmm. Are you finding lower participation in some of the programs, like you're talking about the groups? Because I know y'all were shut down for a while, like most organizations and most groups, but y'all have started picking up with teams and activities.
We have a low number, but we have, for example, we had a team. We call the families, and it's almost 400 families. We call them and, hey, how are you? How is the process you are? And another factor is our families, they are very different in different regions. For example, some families, they live in an apartment with 2 rooms, and sometimes they have 4 or 5 children. And you're thinking about, okay, some of them, they have virtual school in this apartment. They are very complicated. I have 4 kids, and sometimes I put it, I ask you, what the family is doing this? It's very difficult, the process. And the kids in one apartment with these situations with no job, stress, and different reasons. And when you call and they say, hey, how are you? How can we pray for you? What is the process? Is sometimes Anna is another person, she made the calls, and is you can feel when you ask, how can I pray for you? You can listen the petition or the program, and when you pray, it's interesting. It's different results, and for me it's a organic church living in the community, in the street, and it's powerful in that process. Of course, we have families that don't have fathers. It's only the mother. It's different situations, and they say, I want virtual, but they need to go to the school because I need to go to work, and it's difficult. But you can see in different family the power of love working every day with every situation and different problems.
So I imagine with all that contact work, you found that SpringSpirit is way more than just programs, teams, mentor. I mean,
absolutely,
that it is the connection and the impact that's had. It can't be stopped by a virus, can't be stopped by quarantine, can't be stopped by virtual or in person. It's that those relationships are so much deeper and so much bigger than any circumstance we find ourselves in, and it's because those relationships are rooted in Jesus.
Mm-hmm. It's been how many months that you've done the calls?
We start on October, November, and we start every month with the same different questions with the families.
And so it's about 15 or 20 minutes that on average that I hear that the call team spends on the phone. And I've heard from Anna and anecdotally from you that you can see the trust growing in the families through those calls and the relationship, which we had when we have you in person at SpringSpirit, because we see you in person. But it's been kind of a magical thing because you can spend time going deeper where there's baseball and you got to watch your other child that's over here. And there's so much going on while you're at SpringSpirit. So it may not be a a full conversation of depth, but this has given the calling team that opportunity. So we know that God's keeping everybody close to us, even if they can't physically be close to us.
Good word. Yeah, that's great. Well, we're going to kind of move into the second part of the interview now and talk a little bit more about y'all personally and how y'all got involved with SpringSpirit. But before that, I have a little sponsor segment. Your Why is brought to you by You Are Me Coffee, specialty coffee with a purpose. The goal of You Are Me is to partner growers and millers in Meru, Kenya with consumers around the world. Before You Are Me, supply chain limitations discouraged locals from cultivating their coffee. We've changed that by eliminating valueless transactions. The other key to You Are Me is ensuring that farmers and millers are compensated with a living wage. We like to think this is the fairest of trade. You Are Me, they've sponsored us this season. It's been great. They make great coffee. Encourage y'all to go out and buy some, support them. They really do a great job of cutting out that middleman and making sure that these farmers in Kenya are getting compensated like what they should and not getting cut down on price and getting all of the proceeds. And so if you want to get yourself some, you can go to You Are Me Coffee. That's literally the letters URME coffee.com. They have coffee grown in volcanic soil of Meru, Kenya. They have K-Cups, medium to light roast, whole bean coffee, medium to light roast, limited edition HBS barrel-aged whole bean coffee. They are roasting weekly now. You can expect your order to be shipped out within the week of your receipt. So go ahead and go get yourself some. They're helping us out. We want y'all to go help them out. So go ahead and see that. But moving on to the second part of the interview. Yeah, like I said, we want to talk more about y'all. I always think it's amazing to hear the stories of, as we've just talked about, there's life transformations happening, really neat things. Y'all are reaching kids and impacting their lives, and I think it's cool to hear the stories of the people impacting those lives and how y'all got involved with that. So, I guess that's just the question. I'll leave it up to both y'all to answer individually. But how did you get involved with SpringSpirit? What did that story, what did that journey look like?
I'm first.
Okay. You go first.
For me, is everything started in 2015. I was working in another ministry. It's very big and national, and I was in the transition. We moved to Mexico with responsible for that ministry in Mexico. But when, in a few words, this is not happening because the big donor they give the money for Mexico is he died with cancer, and in that point my wife and I, we pray and I said, okay, guys, we have because we made everything to move to Mexico. We have boxes right now in Mexico and suitcase and everything. But we decided, okay, it's not happening. My wife and I, we have a passion for missions. And they say, hey, God, this is our heart. And somebody sent me an email and I looked the web for SpringSpirit, and I like the part of the whole child, the 3 columns, because I work with different ministries, with different organizations, or be a volunteer or staff, and some of them they are very good to in the spiritual way or education or sport. But for me, when I saw it's 3 together in the same ministry, I say I want to be a part of this. And I started the application. I say I saw the position for ministry and I started the application. I arrived. They start the process. I'm in. And in a few words is I believe everything happening. No, it's not a casualty, but it's God show the way. For me, when I arrived to SpringSpirit, that's amazing. And invite me to the last FNL. I was a volunteer that day. And I looked the ministry and everything, and it's amazing because you can see the families together, the kids, the spiritual way, the sport, and the FNL in the spiritual way, and show the center of Jesus is this is okay. It's no, because sometimes when you are right, I go in a church and I am part of the church, and sometimes the kids in classroom, but here is all together. I say, that's interesting, and the Hispanic culture is is more funny on different situations. But I love that part, all the family together, and later I saw the families, the mothers working together, serving the food, and what it's doing in the FNL, and I love the ministry, and I say, okay, I want to be a part of this. And I saw in different ways the SpringSpirit made the transformation in the community, and I want to be the part of this.
So Said, you mentioned a couple times FNL. For those who are watching the podcast that don't know, that's Friday Night Live, right? And that is a worship experience that is for the whole family and for teens. And I know y'all have done parenting sessions on those Friday nights as well, and have really poured into the entire family. And it's a ministry that Chapelwood has been a part of in partnership with SpringSpirit. So beautiful stuff going on.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Laura, do you want to kind of give us your story and what that looked like?
Yeah, hearing Said, I think we're both drawn to the mind, body, soul part of SpringSpirit for sure. And for me, mine kind of starts with I grew up at First Presbyterian Church here in Houston, and they have, in some ways, a similar ministry without the sports. It's an after-school program called the Nehemiah Center, and my family was involved in serving there in different capacities growing up. And I think that triggered something in me. God triggered something in me because I saw how the faith component and the education component and the community engagement component that they had was really solving some deep problems related to poverty in particular. And I loved that. I saw that's the recipe. And I was drawn to wanting to help in that same way, that solving sort of the gaps that you see with the difference that people that have means versus people that come from a less fortunate background, what that means for them. And so saw that, and that kind of wasn't my direct path, but I had that in the back of my mind that I want to be a part of something like that as I start my own career. Fast forward, I ended up getting my history degree from UT and master's in counseling. So I was a teacher for a while, and I was a teacher actually in Spring Branch for part of that time, 12 years total teaching, but 5 at Springwoods Middle School. And it's a wonderful place in Spring Branch ISD. What I learned there as I served a population that is part of the SpringSpirit population is that the teachers are asked to do so much more than what they're able to do in a class period. And that really drove home for me the need for partnership between nonprofits and the schools, because the teachers can't do it alone. And I had seen an example of that in the Nehemiah Center, and I wanted to be part of the solution. And so that just became known in with my friends and relationships. And eventually I got connected with somebody that said, hey, I think you really need to look into SpringSpirit. And it's the perfect match for so many reasons. The education part, I was intentional about learning Spanish. Said will say I'm not perfect by any means, but but the education and then the faith component the whole time, that it wasn't just about tutoring the kids, and it wasn't just about providing a safe space, that there was hope provided through biblical teachings, and that sold me, and I'm so glad.
Yeah, I always think it's amazing to hear the stories of how people got connected with where they're at, and to see connections, like connecting those dots of how God has maybe trained, equipped you, or put a desire into you that maybe you didn't realize what that was going to become, and to see like where you're at now. And it's like, it's so refreshing to me, because as you just think about life, it makes me realize that there's nothing that is necessarily just a coincidence or anything like that. You don't know what God is priming you for in the future. Right. And that's what I always like take away whenever I hear those stories. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Well, and I found I didn't lock myself onto one destiny, right? God kind of, I for whatever reason, I trusted that, I'm going to create opportunities for me to have a skill set that I care about, and God provided, for the time being in this way.
So kind of going back to the question of why, I want to ask y'all, what is your personal why? What is the why that you get up and you go to work at SpringSpirit every day that gives you the passion, that gives you the drive to make an impact in these kids' life? And I mean, as COVID has proven for many people, life is hard and it's challenging, and there are times that you probably over the past year that have been very challenging. And so what is that deep passion, that drive that has allowed y'all to push past that in those hard times?
For me, is two words: life and transformation. When Jesus he died on the cross, is he made that purpose for move my life and death to life. And sometimes sounds very easy, but in the deep, very deep, it's hard. My first mistake, I would like to read something. It's in Isaiah 6:8. He said, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Who shall I send, and who will go for us? And I say, Here I am, send me." I remember that part. I was maybe 14 years old. And it's a conference in Mexico because I'm from Mexico. And I listen that verse and everything, and I say, God, this is my heart. Is something I can serve you? Take it. And it's only very, very honest pray, but and I'm really know God. Okay, and He take it. I met my wife in missions in Mexico. Come to Houston. I never was thinking come to Mexico. I was a contact in Mexico there, and I was a good job there. And when I arrived here, I died in all my areas, in my place, in my salary, in my family, in my culture and everything. I'm start zero here. And when I arrived here, and is a thinking about life and transformation. And is God, I'm here. Is the reason when I arrived here and SpringSpirit, I said, "Hey God, I want to I want to put something you teach me in that process." And because I know my pain in my past, they can be medicine for the future. And I love the families, and I love the kids and the young people. That is in this moment I say it's easy, but I explain the details and the past is no. God killed every area in my life. I was okay. You thinking it's good the morning? Okay, I kill you. Go to move it. You thinking your church is the best? Okay, I kill you. You need to move it. And God, in a few words, kill all my areas, and I say, okay, I need to start. And that's the way is this they can use it. Is okay, God, I'm here. Anything what you want, and I'm here for you.
That's awesome.
I think we're really, really fortunate because you can see that life transformation almost on a daily basis with the work that we do. And, you know, it can be just in the way that a child responds to you or responds to you about the bad grade you're talking about, or responds to how, you know, they struck out on the baseball field. Like you see those teachable moments transforming the kids and the families all the time. And I think that's, for me, that is what keeps you waking up and doing the hard work, because you see almost instant transformation. And how lucky are we to see that? Because so many people can work jobs that they don't experience that on a day-to-day basis. And we're fortunate.
For me, it's not a job, really. It's not a job. It's a privilege.
That's right.
That's amazing. And it's encouraging to my soul to hear y'all talk about that, and to hear just obviously there's passion and love for what y'all are doing in these kids that y'all are making an impact in. And that's refreshing for me to see. So thank y'all for sharing.
Of course.
Well, as we wind down the interview, I always like to give our guests the opportunity to face the cameras. The mics, they are yours. Whatever you wish to say, want to plug SpringSpirit stuff, whatever it is, now is your opportunity to do so.
You want me to start? Okay.
Yes. Ladies first.
So what we have at SpringSpirit is an ability to build relationships with families. We've talked about that here today, and so that we can get the families to come. We can get the kids to come. So then we want to offer programming that serves them. And we've sort of come to the point where we've got to scale all the programming that we have in an affordable way. So what that's meant is just much more volunteer capacity that we have and that we need to fill. In particular, we have a really robust elementary reading program. Right now it's on Zoom and it's worked out really well. Lots of success there. And so the kids are on Zoom twice a week and for 45 minutes with a large group of SpringSpirit kids and volunteers. And then they go into breakout rooms and it's one volunteer with 4 kids and they read on their level. And we work closely with Spring Branch to make sure that we've got their reading levels correct. And anyway, so we want to do that program for about 115 kids. That's our reach goal. And we're at 50 right now for this school year. So that would mean 4-to-1 ratio. We need about 10 to 12 more volunteers just to finish the school year out. And then this program continues in person usually too. So the reading program, and it's a really tangible way to see growth too if you're a volunteer. Same thing with mentors. Mentoring is a 1-to-1 ratio usually. So we ask mentors to come and just walk alongside our kids as they grow up. And the commitment is to meet with them at least once a month in person and keep communication in between. And we ask them to kind of help us support the kids in various ways with tracking their growth. But that's another big need. And the mentor team is doing an awesome job of matching a lot of kids right now. And so that's really exciting to see the kids get excited and the mentors get excited. So that's another way. And then I would say you're looking for small group leaders for ministry eventually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I want to say something is, first, I think so is, thank you so much, Chapelwood, with that church. I remember the first day when I met Kenny, and he started to talk about Chapelwood. But the way he taught is love. It's not only, oh, this church support me. No, it's really love the church. And for me, that's is something impact my life. And I know Kenny loves Chapelwood in different ways, in different regions. And when I see that is thank you so much for first you pray, you support, and because you are in the community too. Is we are together, and I believe that that's the more important part. And the other is when we pray, God show us the way. Okay, we need to support here. We need to do this, or we need to do that, and I find a way in unity in the community to make the transformation and show that amazing Jesus in the community on the streets. That's for me is of course we have. I believe every ministry they have different needs, but if we arrive together in unity in the body of Christ and see, okay, God, we want to see you face to face and show us what we need to do, I believe we can find the solution.
Well, thank y'all for coming on.
Oh, let me ask a question. So right now the reading buddies, it's being done by Zoom.
It is. Mm-hmm.
So literally you could be geographically anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
and be a SpringSpirit Chapelwood volunteer reading with kids in Spring Branch ISD.
That's right. Yeah. We said we got to try this out because we don't know if we're going to be able to have the kids in person, and it started working. And so, yeah, I mean, you can be anywhere.
Yeah. So that I think that's a great call is when we think about right now, particularly, different people are in different circumstances and situations. And you may be listening to this podcast because someone forwarded it to you and God may be stirring inside to say, oh, I want to get to know a little bit more. So they can go to the SpringSpirit website, which is
SpringSpirit.org.
SpringSpirit.org. And they can check that out. They can also go to Chapelwood.org and they can connect because we're in partnership. This really is, we're in partnership with SpringSpirit. I often tell people that when you think of what's going on in SpringSpirit, sometimes you can't even see the line that where Chapwood ends and SpringSpirit begins, SpringSpirit ends and Chapwood begins, and it's not because, we had some people that had this great idea. It really has come through a lot of hard work to lay down egos, lay down, bragging rights, to say what God's doing is important, and we can do this better together. So from a church's perspective, we don't need to create a recreation ministry that is threefold for the whole child. We have one. We're connected with SpringSpirit. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. And one more thing I want to just bring up. I really appreciate from the school district side, I appreciate that the partnership that SpringSpirit has brought has not been we have a program that we know will work, and so we're going to bring it to the district whether they want it or not. That SpringSpirit, like Chapwood, has stepped in and said to the local school district, we're on this together. We are servants, and it's been the servant's heart that has come in to say, from a district, what is it you need? And the reading initiative, which is huge right now within the school district, and then the programs that the district has identified that has shown to work, which I think increases credibility for both SpringSpirit and Chapelwood in the eyes of the district. So thanks
I think
for what
so
y'all
too.
do.
And for you listening, as Joseph said, we will have linked in the description wherever you listen to this. Look in the description, chapelwood.org, springspirit.org. We're going to have both those links there, so you can go directly to those pages after this if that is something that you feel like the Lord might be nudging you towards right now. And so you can go find out more information there. Well, thank y'all for coming on, and thanks for sharing your heart,
Thank
sharing
you
your
for the
story.
invitation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a great way to share good things. So
Yeah. We're back. Great interview.
Yeah, great.
Loved Laura and Saeed. I loved really at the end just hearing their hearts behind what they're doing. And we were talking about a little bit about this in the intro, but just, the thing I walk away with is that, that just passion they have. And that, to me, whenever I talk and I see SpringSpirit, their staff has a huge passion for these kids, and they are out there to, go out of their way to make impressions and give these kids the tools to success that they need and really make transformation in their life. And I think SpringSpirit excels at that.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, what SpringSpirit has done so well is they've identified individuals who have a call. SpringSpirit was born out of a dream and experiences of an individual, but it's so much more. It's not on the shoulders of one person, but you find up and down the organization throughout these individuals who God has placed a call on their lives, and they've responded. And one of the things Saeed said, he talked about being instruments, and in a lot of ways, what SpringSpirit has done is they've identified the instruments and vehicles that God can use, and they have leveraged those opportunities. And so, where we hear Laura talk about education being she didn't use this phrase, but she talked about it being an opportunity for students as a leg up. Kids going to college for the first time in a lot of ways. Education is a vehicle for a deeper and more abundant life, right? And baseball for Kenny Baldwin was an opportunity. It opened doors for him. For me, I'm living proof that baseball opened doors for me because I excelled at a particular sport. It opened doors and provided opportunities, and those opportunities God used in shaping me as a leader, shaping me in learning how to fail. One of the things about baseball is if you don't learn how to fail, you're not ever going to survive in baseball. You're not. You fail way more than you do succeed in baseball. And so you have the physical and the educational, the mental, and then you have this spiritual aspect where they're using these vehicles and these individuals with the mentors as instruments for God to bring about transformation in the community. It starts with individual kid, within their families, within a larger community. And I believe that that someday when we are long gone past this earth and we are able to sit in the presence of God, and we may have a larger grasp on the impact, I believe what we will see is that generations were changed because of the ministry of SpringSpirit, the ministry of Chapelwood in Spring Branch.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's you talked about this towards the end of the interview, but like I've always loved Chapelwood's approach to trying to reinvent the wheel, or like Chapelwood decides to go out and partner and support organizations that are already out there excelling and trying to figure out what are ways that we can support y'all in new, innovative ways. And that's one of my favorite parts of my job is talking to nonprofits and exploring those avenues and everything like that. And so it is cool to see, just like you said, it's so intertwined what Chapelwood is and what SpringSpirit is, and how we support and uplift one another. Yeah. So as we wrap down the podcast, as always, we like to turn it over to the co-host with a call to action. So whatever, is on your heart, whatever's on your mind, Joseph, now is your time to, to talk to the audience.
Yeah. So recently, as a nation, we celebrated a national holiday in MLK Day. And around our country, we had individuals replaying the I Have a Dream speech. And within the church world, when we think about dreams, sometimes we dismiss those too easily. Sometimes we dismiss those as just a bad meal that didn't sit right with us and created some really wonky dreams. But throughout Scripture, we also know that God uses dreams. One of the things that I love about the story of SpringSpirit is that in a lot of ways, God was using a dream that was planted in the heart of one of God's children. A dream that at the time, I don't know if Kenny Baldwin would ever say that he could have envisioned God doing what God has done to this point. But Kenny, as a member of this body of Christ, found here the type of climate that was willing to encourage, partner, support, and send out. And when I think about what God has done in SpringSpirit, as a pastor at Chapelwood, I have a lot of gratitude that we serve in a community like this. And so my call to action would be for our listeners to not dismiss dreams, that God may, and not God may, that God is actively planting seeds and dreams in the hearts and minds of His children. Don't dismiss those dreams. Don't dismiss them if they seem too big. Don't dismiss them if they seem too hard. Don't dismiss them if they seem too far out of reach. Embrace those. Nurture those dreams. Care for them as if it was a seed planted in soil that is needing tending, and see what God may be up to. And just like in our interview today, we were able to identify that while God was at work in the heart and conversations of Kenny and Melissa Baldwin, that God was at work at Chapelwood as well on a parallel track. And at the time, we didn't realize that those tracks actually were so closely aligned that they were one and the same. And so, don't underestimate the ability for God to not only plant dreams, but also to help make those dreams come into fruition. So the call to action is embrace those dreams as something that God may be calling you to, and don't shy away.
Yeah. I mean, what a great message. And I mean, at the end of the day, as we've always said at the end of the episode, this is not just a conversation between me and Joseph. This is not just a conversation between me and Laura or me and Saeed or whoever the guest is, whoever the co-host is. This is a conversation between us, and you're included in on this conversation, right? That's, was the heart behind this, was to share amazing stories of how God's worked through Chapelwood, how it's worked through different organizations. But in that same time, you to hear that nothing's really too big for God to do. You hear these amazing stories, and as these people, as anyone on here has said, there's nothing special about them. There's nothing that made them, something that's not in you. It's just a faith in God. It's following whatever God gives you, those little nudges. Do you follow it? Whenever God places a dream on you, do you dismiss that dream, or do you just say, hey, I'm going to follow this. I'm going to see where this takes me. And sometimes it takes you in a direction you never even saw coming, right? And those are the crazy times. Those are the wild roller coasters. And so this is, like always, people, go and find your why. That's what podcast is encouraging you to go and explore. And in order to do that, and hopefully in order to invite more people in on this conversation, we encourage you to subscribe. We encourage you to leave a review, to like, to share, to tell your friends, hey, go listen to this podcast, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Chapelwood_UMC_serving, and on Facebook at CUMC serving. And so, like always, people, go and find your why.
Real quick before we sign off, tell me, you have any big plans for season 4?
No.
It's a teaser. It's a cliffhanger, Evan. Let's cut. Let's take this over. Hey, you got any big plans for season 4?
Yeah, we have amazing, huge plans. So huge that, I'm going to leave.
No. I know you want to tell us some of your guests. Don't.
I won't.
Hold us in suspense.
Yeah.
But I would tell all your listeners, if they haven't subscribed, they not only need to subscribe, that they need to get 3 to 4 friends subscribed.
That's true. Listen, this is a great, you're on a Friday night, you don't have anything else to do, invite some friends over. Just turn on the podcast. Start a great conversation,
What about date night?
Date night, great.
Date night. This could be your date night podcast.
This is great. Yeah. So go and do that. We've got 3 seasons of content now. There's so much. Hey, if you've listened to an audio form, go ahead and go watch a video. We do video as well. So, go on Facebook, go on YouTube, watch the video version of this.
Evan, you know what? You've got a face for video.
No, I can agree with that one.
No, you look good in HD.
Thank you.
I've often thought I was more of a 720 standard def kind of guy.
Season 2, we were in 720. Now we're in 4K. 4K. But yeah, get ready for season 4. We will be back sometime in the spring.
You're gonna have me back, right?
Of course. You've been on every season so far. We'll see where that goes. But also, as we wrap down, I do want to give a shout out to Ruby and Jeff, who have been helping us always behind the scenes and help us set up. Ruby helps us whenever we are recording with the audio, and Jeff, gets us set up with all this nice equipment and everything like that. So huge shout out to them. We couldn't do this without them. Yeah. So we'll see y'all next season.
Peace, love, and podcast.